Stanley Leong and Susan Ang with you. This is MoneyMind on CNA938. Thank you for joining us. Now, I remember that from very early on, in fact, before entering the workforce too, I was very clear about the sort of companies that I wouldn't want to join. Companies whose values ran counter to my own, maybe products that they produced that would destroy life or whose mission was to make as much profit as possible at the expense of those that they were calling customers or stakeholders. I mean, one case in point would be maybe tobacco companies.
And I suppose there are many people like you, Stan, putting values first. So here's the question. How important are values to you? Are you okay to compromise on them? And are some values more highly valued, for want of a better word, by some quarters of the population more than others? Well, time to unearth the answers to our questions as we get talking with our guest on MoneyMind today, Gerald Ang, founder and CEO of consumer data and analytics company Milieu Insight. Gerald, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Stanley and Susan. Really glad to be here today.
I'm very happy to talk to you. So let's talk about your study, the Values at Work study. Some background and what the analysis of that and what you seek to establish with this study.
Yeah, so as the world is now emerging from the pandemic and businesses develop new policies to adapt to the new normal, we felt that it was a good time to really check in on how workers are feeling. Late last year, the term the Great Resignation was coined to show how workers are shifting to jobs that offer better perks and flexibility. There also has been a growing narrative that workers, especially the younger generation, are seeking jobs that give them a higher sense of purpose and ones that establish a positive work culture. With our latest Values at Work study, we wanted to go beyond standard workplace benefits to explore where employees stand on their values at the workplace. We surveyed about 4,000 respondents across 4 countries in Southeast Asia, namely Singapore, Thailand, Philippines, and Malaysia. We hope that the insights from this study will help businesses understand how to communicate and, most importantly, uphold their values and in turn positively impact employee well-being and productivity. At Milieu, we believe that providing a healthy workplace environment goes beyond just perks and benefits. And we wanted to provide more insight on this topic so that businesses can keep this in mind as they formulate new strategies to engage their workers.
Yeah, sounds a little bit like whether they're hygiene factors or motivating factors. So that's something we're going to be getting greater clarity on. But, when we talk about values, are we talking about personal, individual values deemed as important, or are we referring to corporate values?
Yeah, so we cover both personal and corporate values in this study. But more importantly, we wanted to understand how personal values interact with corporate values.
Right.
And whether workers gravitate more towards businesses that have corporate values that are aligned with their own values. We also wanted to understand how they feel about working for a company that goes against their values and how that plays into their sense of belonging and motivation levels. In addition to that, as businesses increasingly take a stand on social topics in their corporate messaging, for this month, for example, when it's Pride Month, we also think that it's important to be cognizant of how it impacts their employees and not just their customers. Being a founder of a relatively young business myself, I personally feel it's important that the stand we take in public is a representation of how we truly feel as a company, so that we can all work towards a cause that we all believe in. Yeah.
So here's the question. How rigid are we? How steadfast and unwavering have you found employers to be when they look at their personal values vis-a-vis the workplace values?
Well, not very rigid.
Okay.
Across the 4 markets in Southeast Asia where we ran this study, a vast majority, about 96% of respondents, did indicate that the values of the company they work for are important to them. However, when we dug deeper and asked them whether they are willing to work for a company that goes against their values, 51% actually indicated that they're willing to do so.
That sounds a little bit surprising.
Yeah.
But I think what this means is that a substantial proportion of workers who believe that the values of a company are important to them are still willing to work for companies that goes against their values. This seems a bit counterintuitive. Yeah?
Yes, it does. What might some of these values be? Could it be the values of trust and integrity and honesty, for example? You don't want to work for a company that isn't honest?
Yeah, it's really values around trust, kind of transparency and things like that. But it's also things like sense of responsibility, and things like that as well. But I think at the end of the day, it's counterintuitive, but other factors such as salary, work benefits still come into play when we decide who we want to work for. But I don't think that this paints the whole picture, because when we actually dig deeper into the data and looked at employees' sense of belonging and productivity, those that work for companies that have values aligned with their own report a higher sense of belonging and productivity than those that do not. Right. So this shows that while employees do not need to work for a company that aligns with their own values, having the same values goes a long way in making them enjoy their work. And in turn be willing to do more for the business. And I think that this is a very important point to take note of, because I don't think that businesses want to just hire people into jobs, but hire people that can take the business to the next level. And I think the values kind of go a long way in ensuring that is achieved.
And even as we talk about values as well, I suppose there will be some that are core and integral. It has to be there before I decide to want to work with that company. And there's some like, I value it, but okay, if it's not there, I can still, do my work.
I can live with it. But the flip side of this, though, is that in markets where jobs might be very difficult to come by and where people's lives are at stake, if they choose not to continue with the work, could that have had a bearing on that 51%?
Especially because we just emerged from the pandemic, I think it definitely does. I think that right now there's this term, beggars can't be choosers, right? And a lot of people are just here to really make ends meet. And I think that definitely plays a factor into the companies that they work for. But at the end of the day, I think business owners also have to be cognizant of the fact that they should communicate and hire people that are kind of aligned to their values, because it affects the productivity of the workers and also how happy the workers are working for them.
And while you're talking about values as well, I quickly, just to remind myself what the values are of this organization that Sue and I work for. And they are respect, teamwork, and drive. I resonate with all three.
I resonate with that.
No wonder I work here. All right. Now, in general, let's get an idea of how happy, satisfied workers are with where they are working across the 4 markets. You talked about the 4 markets, so I think it's Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, and was it Thailand?
Thailand.
All right. So how happy are the workers in these 4 countries?
Yeah, sure. We measure this across 2 core areas. So sense of belonging and closeness with their colleagues, which are very important factors. In terms of sense of belonging, about 59% of workers across all 4 markets indicate that they feel a sense of belonging in their company. However, a notable 41% do not feel that way. When it comes to closeness with their colleagues, about 57% of respondents indicate that they are close to their colleagues. But again, this leaves 43% who indicate otherwise. So this shows that a sizable proportion of workers might not be as happy as they should be at their workplace, which also tells us that more can be done. However, when we actually look at a very interesting insight, which is work productivity, a larger majority of 73% indicate that they can do their job effectively. What this means is that it shows that workers do not necessarily have to be happy to be able to do their job well. However, when we looked at work productivity across workers who are happy, interestingly, a higher proportion, about 87%, indicate that they can do their job effectively, compared to only 53% of those who are not happy. So I think it shows that happiness and satisfaction still play an important role in ensuring that most employees stay motivated and do their jobs to the best of their efforts.
Yeah, I would imagine that could be. I mean, I can be productive full stop, but I can be productive plus. If I was happy enough in my work, right? If I had a good team to work with and where the organization allows me to be better. So let's look at the markets, the study, and the values. Can you list those values that are most important to employees across those markets? The top 5.
Sure. The top 5 values that are important to employees are a sense of responsibility, quality work, honesty, mutual respect with colleagues, and clear communication. Others such as accountability and transparency also scored high. But I think interestingly, there is no one value that scored much higher than the others, which indicates that it's really a combination of right values that creates a healthy work environment. I think that values such as quality work comes in hand in hand with a sense of responsibility and clear communication, right? And values such as honesty and mutual respect allows them to do so in a healthy and constructive way. And I think that compromising on any one of these values will affect how collaborative a workplace is, and in turn also affect the other values as well.
Okay, so that's across the 4 different markets, right? The list that you just provided. Anything that was different for those that you were surveying? I mean, in terms of Singaporean workers, were we also aligned with the general results?
Yeah, so broadly speaking, the same values that are important across the 4 markets are also important for Singaporean workers. The most important value for Singaporean workers is a sense of responsibility. This is prominent across all workers above the age of 35, but even more prominent for workers above the age of 55. I think a large proportion of Singaporean workers also think that mutual respect and clear communication are important to them. And that, I think, indicates that the collaborative aspect of the workplace is important.
Right.
And given that Singapore is the hub for many multinational companies where they establish their global and regional operations, I believe that the importance of collaboration is not only limited to the physical workplace, but also with their colleagues around the world as we adapt to different cultures and working styles.
And especially when we had to adapt over the last 2 years, you would have found that as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. And I myself have lived and worked in many of these countries during my career, and now I work in a company that has offices across 6 countries. So I do appreciate how important cross-cultural communication is, especially when we communicate with others digitally, even within our own countries.
Yeah, multinational, multicultural, multi-generational.
Now let's talk about the demographic groups that you had, because your survey was quite broad, wasn't it? Were there obvious differences in values that mattered more to the different groups?
Yes. To start off, there were differences across age groups. The top value that differs is abiding by company rules, where a higher proportion of 45-plus-year-old workers think it's important as compared to younger workers. Beyond that, older workers also value being punctual at work more than younger workers.
Younger people? Okay. Yeah.
But I think that these differences are just really perhaps a reflection of the changing dynamics at work, where rules at work are no longer as rigid as they were before.
Yeah.
And I think most importantly, businesses should take extra care in how they communicate workplace policies and ensure that they cater to how different workers of different age groups will perceive and accept it.
I mean, the way we work has changed. Going to work could mean just opening your bedroom door, or maybe not even, stepping from bed to desk.
Roll out a bit,
5 minutes.
2 steps to the desk. Yeah.
Not even 5 minutes.
Yeah, very interesting. And punctuality, I think that's still so important. Well, I guess it depends on the nature of work as well.
Yes, I was about to say, in the work that we do, we kind of have to be pre-punctual.
Stickler for time, man.
Yes. So perhaps it is the kind of work that we need to do as well.
Anyone who needs punctuality training, you can join us. We will make sure we get you up to speed. We are in conversation with Gerald Ang, who is founder and CEO of consumer data and analytics company Milieu Insight. And we are finding out more about a study that they recently conducted and looking at the results of the values at work study, understanding the values that matter to us and our fellow Southeast Asian workers here. So what, in practical terms, Gerald, can employees or employers and corporate leaders take away from the results that have emerged from this study?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question to wrap up the study. I think while companies rush to define workplace policies and benefits to usher in the new normal, it's important not to neglect the concept of company values and how it will impact employees' well-being and productivity. While it's important to ensure that employees have a comfortable work arrangement, I think it's also important to ensure that workers believe in the work they do and how the company operates. In doing so, a company can, I think, move beyond offering more competitive benefits to attract people and get to a point where they can attract good employees that are willing to go the extra mile in helping them achieve its vision. In the current economic climate especially, I think it's important to have employees that are willing to think of new ways to help the company stay competitive, but more importantly, the perseverance to carry it through to the end. And I hope that the results of this study will encourage corporate leaders to think deeper into how they can connect with their employees, and most importantly, ensure that workers work in an environment that empowers them to succeed. And when it comes to employees themselves, the same is true. It is also important for employees not to just compare benefits when deciding on which company to join, but understand a company's values and see if they believe in them. I think that this will allow them to have a more meaningful and productive career, so that going to work every day is not a chore, but more of a source of enjoyment.
Yeah,
okay.
Sue, I totally enjoy
us. Yeah.
I totally enjoy my work because Sue is sitting across from me.
The thing
so
is,
aligned.
we always say we come to play, we don't come to work. Although I
Don't
always
tell our bosses
say,
that.
don't tell our bosses that.
Gerald, thank you so much.
Thank
I appreciate
you.
your insights with the results
No
coming out
problem.
of the Values at Work study conducted by Milieu Insight. Gerald Ang is founder and CEO of consumer data and analytics company there, Milieu Insight. Have a great week ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.